Now at one stage it was rather common for pro wrestlers to pass away at a young age. Thankfully, top wrestling companies such as WWE have their talent take part in drug testing, and most WWE superstars are very strict on what they put into their bodies. However, a number of talents who competed in WWE's rival promotion WCW have passed away at a really young age. This unfortunate passing can go often under the radar, and it's important to remember their specific contributions to the world of pro wrestling. Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 WCW stars you didn't know had passed away. Number 10. Doug Furnas. Most fans know Doug Furnas for his short time in WWE. He would debut at the 1996 Survivor Series pay-per-view and would mainly be featured in a tag team role alongside Phil LaFon. Furnas did actually have a run, albeit a brief one, in WCW 6 years prior, and Furnas was given a huge spotlight, and they would embark in a feud with the popular stable of Four Horsemen. Unfortunately, Furnas passed away in 2012 at his home in Arizona. His body was found decomposed, which made medical examiners question just how long Furnas had been deceased for. Furnas's official cause of death would be from hypertensive heart disease. He was 52 years of age. Number 9. Emery Hale. Emery Hale entered WCW during the most infamous time of the promotion's existence. The company was literally on its last legs, and it was becoming incredibly hard for them to create new stars. Legendary manager Jimmy Hart believed that due to Hale's impressive look and stature, he could be a huge star for WCW and potentially even feud with Hulk Hogan. Sadly, the crowd just couldn't connect with him, and this included when WCW decided to put a mask on him and rename him as The Machine. Hall would unfortunately have an extremely short life as he passed away at just 36. In 2003, Hale received a kidney transplant but later developed pneumonia. He would then pass away 3 years later in 2006 from kidney failure. Number 8. Randy Anderson. In terms of iconic WCW referees, Randy Anderson is perhaps one of the most iconic. Anderson was childhood friends with Arn Anderson before he entered the world of pro wrestling. He would become an incredibly important referee for WCW during the Monday Night Wars, and even refereed the Hulk Hogan heel turn in 1996. Sadly, in 1999, Anderson was forced to take a step back from the world of WCW as he was undergoing a battle with cancer. The WCW staple was diagnosed with testicular cancer at the age of 36, and he would pass away a few years later with his loving family by his side. Number 7. Rocco Rock. The Public Enemy were one of the most established tag teams of the 90s. Having had a successful run in ACW, the duo jumped to WCW, where they also achieved success by winning the WCW tag titles. One of the members of the Public Enemy was Rocco Rock, and unfortunately his time on Earth would be cut short. He would pass away from a heart attack in September 2002 while en route to a pro wrestling show. He was just 51 years old. During his career, he had attained a reputation for being one of the nicest guys in pro wrestling. PW Insider's Mike Johnson would state in a tribute to Rocco Rock that he always went out of his way to be nice to fans, and he never forgot where he came from. Number 6. Hector Garza. Hector Garza was one of the most underrated stars of the WCW's Cruiserweight division, and it was clear to fans that he had a ton of potential. His biggest moment of his time in WCW was when they allowed Garza to score an upset victory over Scott Hall on Nitro, and he looked like he was going to be set for a huge push, but sadly it never materialized. Garza would be part of the Latino World Order alongside Eddie Guerrero, but he unfortunately parted ways with WCW in 1999. Garza would continue wrestling after his WCW departure, but in 2012 it was announced that he had been diagnosed with lung cancer. He retired from pro wrestling with immediate effect and sadly passed away in 2013 at just the age of 43. Number 5. The Renegade. Debuting in 1995, the Renegade was presented as virtually a carbon copy of the Ultimate Warrior. Naturally, this completely flopped, and it was crazy to think that key figures in WCW believed that this was going to actually work. The Renegade would eventually be released from the company, and this ultimately led to Richard Wilson, who played the character, falling into a deep depression. At the age of 33, Wilson committed suicide. He never got the support he so badly needed during his time, and his demons simply got the better of him. His passing was a strong reminder of how anyone can be struggling at any time, and the sheer importance of reaching out to friends and loved ones. Number 4. The Wall. During his final years of WCW, The Wall actually received a substantial push. He began his time in WCW as a bodyguard before he transitioned into a single star. The Wall had a great presence on screen, and he had a rather impressive looking chokeslam. Although he never truly pushed through into the main event scene in WCW, he had some memorable matches and segments with the likes of Crowbar and even Scott Steiner. In 2001, The Wall would be given a developmental deal by WWE, but he would later be released as he had a number of issues that he wanted to deal with. He would proceed to have runs in TNA as well as in Japan, but in 2003, he was found dead in his hotel room. He'd suffered a heart attack and passed away at just 36 years of age. Number 3. Bryan Adams. Bryan Adams had a number of notable gimmicks and characters during his wrestling career. He portrayed the character of Crush in WWE before becoming a member of the NWO faction in WCW. Adams, alongside Brian Clark, would also join forces to create Chronic. Chronic were presented extremely strong during their time in WCW and even had an extended feud with Goldberg, which was a sign that WCW saw a lot of potential in the duo. When WCW were brought out by WWE, Chronic would enter into a feud with Kane and The Undertaker, but this WWE run didn't live up to the standards that WWE or the fans wanted. Unfortunately, Adams passed away after a drug overdose in 2007. He was just 43 years old. During his time in pro wrestling, Adams had built a fantastic bond with The Undertaker, and the dead man would even pay tribute to Adams during his 2022 Hall of Fame speech. Number 2. Daphne. Daphne first appeared in WCW all the way back in 1999, and her character was a Harley Quinn-inspired villain who stood side by side with David Flair and Crowbar. Her character work was tremendous, and her devotion to the gimmick stood out. She would even win the WCW Cruiserweight title, making her one of the only women to ever hold a popular title. Following her WCW departure, Daphne would find herself in TNA, where she would be one of the top stars in the Knockouts division. She would work with everyone up and down the card, and she always received credit for being willing to take brutal hardcore bumps. In 2021, Daphne sadly committed suicide. She struggled with her mental health, and she believed that she was all alone and had nobody in her life. Following her passing, the wrestling world came together to pay tribute to her. Daphne made a positive impression on everyone she ever worked with, and her close friend Mick Foley led the tributes on Twitter by tweeting, "I'm so very sorry to learn of Daphne's passing. A terrible loss for our family, friends, and wrestling. She was far ahead of her time in our business. Rest in peace, Daphne. If you're hurting and thinking of doing harm to yourself, please know that help is available. 800-273-8255. And number 1. Kanyon. A former US champion, Kanyon is widely regarded as being one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time. He was beloved by fellow wrestlers as well as fans, and he truly had every tool it took to reach the top of the wrestling industry. One of Kanyon's first gimmicks in WCW was Mortis. He would wear a sinister mask and attire, but the character held him back. However, when he became Kanyon and let fans see the real him, this is when his popularity skyrocketed. He would debut a catchphrase where he rhetorically asked the fans, "Who better than Kanyon?" He'd form a close bond on screen and behind the curtain with Diamond Dallas Page, and their eventual feud was one of the highlights of the final months of WCW programming. Although Kanyon did end up joining WWE, his run was unmemorable, and it was clear that WWE couldn't see his full potential. Unfortunately, in 2010, Kanyon committed suicide. He'd suffered from bipolar, and he had deeply struggled with his mental health throughout his life. Despite his passing, his memory and contributions to the world of pro wrestling will never be forgotten.